right. There we go. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Terry Reed, and I'm here with our co-lead pastor of Fifth Avenue Church, Melissa Skinner. And we have invited Tyler and Lindsey Robinson as our guests on Sacred Conversations tonight. We're so excited to have you guys. So, hello. And Tyler and Lindsey are going to be sharing with us their hearts and their experience as an interracial couple with biracial kiddos in a very predominantly white Pacific Northwest. About it? Anything that I should add to that?
Oh, we're just ready to be open and honest and allow other people to share in our personal experience. It is our personal experience. It is not the experience of every BIPOC family, but we're more than happy to share if it helps anyone grow. And we're always open for questions and requests.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. Melissa?
Yeah, so I thought we could start out by just saying, Tyler and Lindsey, can you tell us what was the first thing you guys liked about each other when you were brand new to each other? What was it that made you go toward each other?
I like that he was white. That's all I want. No. Well, actually, we found each other online, but we didn't find each other. So our story is totally God-centered. So long story short, I was working late nights doing karaoke, and I was on this website, and it was awful. And I got a lot of people who were racist and evil and gross. And I said, okay, I'm taking down the profile. I've had it. And I heard the voice of the Lord say, try it one more time. And I said, no, thank you, Lord.
You're so polite.
Rather not. And God said again, try it one more time. So I tried it. And my username was Proverbs 18 and 22. So I'm like, this is what I'm about. And
which is?
It's he who findeth a wife findeth a good thing. So, wife material. So I went on there and I made that search impossible. Because I was like, I'm going to show you, God. You don't know, I know. So I searched and only 3 people came up. And on the top of the list was Tyler for Christ. So
that's
I guess
about it.
What drew us together was just God. The fact that my username was a scripture, his username was Tyler for Christ, and we didn't have any shame about our faith. And also, look at this mug.
Our profiles were very detailed in what we wanted in our faith, which was not the norm for most sites. So you don't get people being that blatantly open and honest about who they are and what they're looking for. So I particularly I was open to any race in dating. I had stopped looking because I was really discouraged. So when she messaged me, I was like, she's beautiful and she's that open about her faith and what she wants. Yeah, I got to talk to her. So yeah.
That's
how many years ago was that now?
9
years ago, as of November 4th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I think of each person's journey with God and their relationship with God as so personal and unique to the person. So your personality will really play out in it. So I was wondering, what is each of your favorite thing about the other person's relationship with God? I'm picturing, you're probably the opposite of each other in some ways. So maybe you are really benefited by the other person being strong in a way that it's where you need to lean or whatever.
Tyler has gifts and talents that I was not blessed with. That's true. Tyler has healing hands. He can just touch and pray. And I have endometriosis, so that definitely comes in handy. And he worships fervently. He's such a worshiper. And anyone who worships can unlock power unlike anything else. So money isn't power, but a man that can get down on his knees and raise his hand, now that's power. So he and his faith, so I have endometriosis, and I was married once before and tried to have children and couldn't reproduce children. And we got to the point where I just said, I'm barren. I can't have children. I tried for 4 years, it's not gonna happen. And when we started dating, I told him to not marry me because I couldn't have children. He said, I know that you're the woman that I'm gonna marry, and I know that I'm gonna have children, and you're the woman that's gonna give them to me. And I thought, I know you a fool. But that wasn't foolishness, it was faith, and I just didn't have it. So I've always really appreciated his strong faith in his, but that's what you get from worship. Yeah.
Amen.
And for me with Lindsey, she hears, like she said, she hears God audibly. And in the beginning of our marriage, I didn't really listen to those things because I didn't hear and I hadn't had my sign. But God showed me quickly that I need to listen to her when he speaks to her. So when he speaks to her, I don't question it now. Because there were times when, like when we were looking to have a first child, it was only, we got married in August, and it was by January, I think, end of January, like
It's February.
Yeah, okay, February time that she was saying, I feel like God's telling us we need to start having a child. And I'm like, I wanted a year of marriage beforehand, and so I'm like, I don't know. And so I should have listened to her, but our pastors at the time back in Washington were praying, and they called and they said, we feel like God's saying the same thing. And then a friend out of the blue that was in a completely different state called and said, are you guys okay? I just want to check in with you. I had a dream that you were expecting. And I'm like, okay, God hit me over the head with a baseball bat. I'm going to listen now. And I'm going to, when she says something, I'm going to say, okay, I've just learned to listen to her, and when God speaks through her, it's truth, and not to doubt that. But she talks about faith. She has a faith that is ginormous. And one thing she always says is that she won't ever be disobedient to God. If he tells her to do something, she's going to do it. And so I love that about her.
I love that in sharing your different approaches to faith, and not so much the approach, but how you hear. Tyler, if yours is deep worship and intercession, and that's such a beautiful, powerful thing, like Lindsey was saying. And Lindsey, if you hear God and he's saying, that's your lane, and I'm going to let you have it, and I trust your hearing. I trust that you hear God for us, for our family. I just think that's a beautiful thing, you guys. Again, differences, and we're going to be talking a lot about race tonight, but it's not just race, it's differences and beauty that complements itself in our faith too. So I think that's a great question and great answer. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So I was also wondering, what kind of exposure or experience did each of you have with each other's race before meeting each other? Like, did you guys grow up in like really intercultural settings, or was it mostly people that just look like you? I was wondering, how green were you when you green, like this is brand new, when you decided to like get together?
Well, personally, I live in America, so I have a lot of experience with white culture, if there is such a thing. So everything was white. Television was white. We go to school, the posters were white. Everything was white. So, but there were a lot of things about white culture I didn't understand, because I did grow up in a predominantly Black neighborhood with, and the schools were predominantly Black that I went to. I had a few schools that I went to that had a lot of other ethnicities, but for the most part, most of the schools I went to were predominantly Black. But I don't think I was half as unaware, because I live here. I live in America.
For me, I grew up in Central Oregon. I grew up in Bend till I was 16 and moved to Washington. So I was in predominantly white states and cities. Um, Bend had like maybe one black person, I think, growing up. At least I didn't really notice very many, you know. Um, I had more black friends growing up in Washington as I got older, but and then other families in a church I was going to that had um, a biracial had biracial children, so another interracial family, and we're friends with them. But I didn't have a whole lot of, you know, interaction with a larger scale of you know, different races. I was predominantly surrounded by white people. So, but I was always open, like I said, in dating, I was always open to whoever. At least how I was, my views growing up, no matter what I was raised like, my views growing up, I just loved people. So I did not have a I had racial issues because that was just the world I was in, you know, things I didn't understand, but um, I was open to anything.
That is one reason why we were wanting to bring up the idea of how much exposure beforehand, because it's quite often that anybody besides white people, so any person of color, will have learned what it's like to live in and work within a setting that is not just their own race. Um, and there are many, many, many people like myself and maybe you, Terry, and you, Tyler, where it's never been a thought like to picture what is my own culture, what is my culture versus their culture or whatever. It's more like people are just normal, and then maybe there's a few people sprinkled in that are not normal or whatever, but there's just no concept of what it's like to adapt or code switch or whatever. So that's really interesting, the two perspective you guys have brought in to your marriage of just the different backgrounds.
Well, I think we even have that regardless of, you know, white, black. You know, what I realized uh, when I realized I don't understand other ethnicities, I don't understand other minorities, was a 4th of July celebration. And my Indian friend had us over for a 4th of July celebration, and there were no hot dogs, no ribs or hamburgers. And I'm like, do you know what today is? So it was weird for me, because even being black, we still did it, you know, ribs and, you know, all that stuff. But realizing that not every culture in this country celebrates everything the way I celebrated was eye-opening for me. Mm-hmm. And we're all celebrating the same thing, but we all celebrate it differently. But I only know about the way that we celebrate it, you know?
Yeah.
So what kinds of surprises did you guys have once you did join teams? It could be funny surprises, like I can't believe you do it that way, or maybe, no, I really can't believe you do it that way and you should stop. You know, like what kind of surprises took you off guard when you got together?
Was it more you than me, you think?
Probably. Yeah.
What was it?
I mean, the thing is there were, like I said, in culture growing up, just surrounded by predominantly white people, there were things that were said that I didn't even realize were racist. You know, things that were inappropriate, that I just hear other people saying as funny or okay, and racial slurs that I didn't even realize were racial slurs, because I hear it used in a sentence and I'm like, okay, that's how you use that, and that's what that means. You figure out how to use it and you use it. So she would point out things that were like, that's not okay.
It's problematic.
Yeah. And I'm like, thank you for telling me, because I don't want to run around saying that all the time. You know, so there were things that I learned just by being with her, was isn't acceptable and what isn't okay. And
Like touching my hair.
yeah,
You share about that.
It was really funny because I I like to wear wigs because I like to change up my style every day. I like to be able to transform, but my hair is perfectly lovely. I'm not bald or anything wrong. My hair is not super short. There's nothing wrong with it. But a lot of times people are curious about my hair. And I don't think he flinched at first. He was just kind of like, okay, I'm not going to mention it. But the first time I think I took off my wig and he saw my natural hair, he was a little enthralled and had to like hold himself back from just like grabbing. But there's a million and one things that I think Tyler had to learn about that, like different hair care products. A lot, yeah. What is gel for you is not gel for me. He had to learn about, he's used to listening to Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley and, the Rat Pack. And so when I'm like, oh, you don't know anything about Gerald Levert? we had some fun melding those childhoods and those realities. And for me, it's funny because we were actually talking about this today. I had to adjust to white church. Like I had been in white spaces before, but that's a space I had not been in. I had not been in white church. And I was used to running up and down the aisles and shouting hallelujah and, really just, when I went home after praise and worship, I wanted to be exhausted, need a Nutrient bar and some Gatorade. That's what I consider worship. So when I got here and people were so demure and, they were just very thoughtful, very pensive, I just wasn't used to that. So going to church with him, I was like, what am I supposed to do? So that was a surprise. That was a shock. But yeah, there's a lot of.
And then the reverse is when I go back to Oklahoma and visit her family, we go to church, it's 3 hours long. Wow. And you think the pastor's done, he's wrapping up. We're getting going, the music kicks in and get the handkerchief out and we're going again.
Heaven's 24/7. We don't stop.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of interesting learning, and how the cultures work and how we each do things.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience.
I've learned so much.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you thought would be really hard and it turned out like no biggie, as far as like marrying a white guy or marrying a black girl?
So my first husband was white. And we had a lot of issues because he, for all intents and purposes, wouldn't allow me to be black. He had a hard time with me doing anything that was cultural. And not necessarily so much to the point of denying me my culture, but more making it so uncomfortable for me that I would deny it. So there was no listening to rap. There was no, talking to my girls or and I rarely had family welcome to even come visit. I think the only one that was ever came to visit was my youngest brother, but I had nothing in my home that was even close to my culture. Nothing said black, nothing resembled me. So when I got with Tyler and I'm like, I want to celebrate Kwanzaa. He said, yeah, let's do it. Buy me a daishiki, let's go. And the fact that he celebrates our culture, the fact that when I tell him, no, that's racist, and he says, all right, we ain't doing it. I was shocked. I was pleasantly surprised that not only does he celebrate what makes me me, he exalts what makes me me. He tells everybody proudly that he has little brown children. and celebrates the things that make my heart whole and makes me feel like home.
I love that you use that word celebrate, because I love the word anyway. And we've been talking about birthdays, but the fact that you truly do celebrate the differences and the beauty and the uniqueness and the creativity of it, that it's something new. It's like you look at it with new eyes. And Tyler, I have to say how refreshing it is as a white person who messes up how I talk about uh, racial concepts and even social concepts and stuff like that. I stumble over my words, and I think some people who are going to watch this will probably appreciate that when you say something and Lindsey will correct and say, that's racist, or that's this, or, that's a slur or whatever. You're just like, well, thanks, thank you for pointing it out. It doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of defensiveness in you. And of course it might be simpler because you're married. However, you seem to bring an openness to that is teachable and wanting to grow and wanting to learn, and isn't asserting the fact that you're white and that your white culture is kind of predominantly everywhere into your home. And I just think that's lovely.
Thank you.
So that being said, though, he had a hard time with his white fragility too.
Mm-hmm.
When all this was, revving up.
Yep.
Can you?
There were things I didn't realize that I did or thought about, even, that were still like looking at things that I didn't think were a problem, that were actually problems. Like coming with having white privilege. Mm-hmm. And until they're brought up, I'm like, oh, you're right. That still is white privilege. I don't have to worry about these particular things because I'm white, and I don't think about them because I'm white. Mm-hmm. So until things come up, I may not even realize it. It's not purposeful, but it's out of sight, out of mind. Mm-hmm. It's pure, just, it is ignorance, just because I don't have to see it like that. So being married to her, being with her, there's a lot of things that are brought to light that I get to correct. I have a front row seat to making those changes where so many other people don't. And I know her because she loves me. She's my wife. She comes from a place of help, a place of healing, a place of growth, not a place of condemnation or trying to knock me down. She's trying to help improve me and help me grow in areas. And that's what God put her in my life for. She's my partner, so I look at that as a growth opportunity.
Awesome. So what would you, both of you, or each of you, say or extend as an invitation to those of us who maybe don't have a Lindsey who they're partnered with,
my phone number is
yeah, we'll list it at the end. Contact info. Please.
The best thing someone can do, honestly, is be open to other ideas and realize that there are other ideas. I think because we're inundated with images that look like us, that make us feel comfortable, that we strive to keep that comfort. So sometimes make yourself a little uncomfortable. Go to spaces you wouldn't normally go, see people you wouldn't normally see, eat at restaurants you wouldn't normally eat at. And we used to go to this Ethiopian restaurant back in Spokane, and still to this day, she asked about the baby. She was there from the moment she was a baby and she's now 7.
We had our wedding reception there. Before the wedding, we met with everybody, all the family and all the, mm-hmm. So she's been a part of our lives, and when we go back, she wants to see the kids, but yeah.
And she's from Ethiopia, and I don't know anyone from Ethiopia but her. Well, her and her family that worked there in the restaurant, but I never met anyone from Ethiopia. So it's sometimes just going to spaces you wouldn't normally think to go. Could I have gone to KFC that night? Absolutely, but I wouldn't have met her.
And you find out too, these people are, I mean, all the people you meet, like especially with her, she prayed over our oldest daughter when she was a baby. We came in and she prayed over her in her restaurant. And so just you find out that you have these connections to people and they change your lives. So don't judge a book by its cover. Don't ignore an opportunity to grow and to get to know somebody on such a deeper level.
And go to places where these people are. Go to a Juneteenth celebration. That's where you'll find us. Go to a Black barber shop. That's where you'll find us. You know, we are coming out of our spaces into your spaces more and more. You see, you know, Black people on the slopes. You see Black people that they're swimming and skiing and doing all sorts of things. So cruising and all sorts of things that we were told when I was younger were not Black spaces. So come see about our spaces. Put yourself in, you know, in a situation where it's more of us, and so you can see us. Don't be scared to come to our neighborhoods and eat at our barbecue joints.
Really good food.
Yes, they are.
Don't regret it.
So that makes me just think we're all just one people group. We can group ourselves off however we want, but at the end of the day, like we all have the same heavenly father and mother, however you want to look at it. But we're just brothers and sisters.
True. Absolutely true. And I refer to everyone else. Yes, hey sis, how you doing? Every time I talk to you, hey sis. You know, your skin and my skin is what they would like to use to separate us. And when I say they, I mean evil. Is like what they would like to separate us. But really, that's the only thing they can find.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So turning toward, so we've talked about you guys as a couple. I thought we could turn toward others' reaction toward you as a couple. So I'm thinking cliches. Do you guys have a least favorite cliche that about interracial couples, like misunderstandings, or what do people say that just bugs you or that's downright bad, or what are your thoughts on cliches?
I think the thing that bothers me the most is when people assume that we only date white people or only date Black people. That is the biggest mistake anyone can make. We dated good people. I didn't go searching for some white guy. He didn't go searching for some Black woman. We found each other because God ordained it to be so, and didn't care about what color we were. If God didn't care, why should anyone else care? So we hate when people ask us, "Oh, so you're into white guys, are you? Oh, you're into Black girls? Like, I'm into that one."
Yeah.
So that's always fun. It's also Tyler doesn't normally tell people that I'm Black when he's just saying, I mean, my name is Lindsey Robinson, so most people don't think that he has this, you know, chocolate gumdrop sitting in his house. But
I've had people that have known me for some time and known that I had a wife and children, but if I didn't show them pictures, they didn't know. I don't need to go around saying my wife is Black. I don't feel the need to explain that to people, because that's, yes, who she is and her culture and her ethnicity is important, but I don't need to go around bragging about it like I have some sort of ownership or right to her culture. I don't try to integrate into her culture or be Black, so to speak, just talk like that. You know, like, we just are who we are together. And so when people find out, they're like, oh, you can see this facial reaction. It's like, oh, your wife's Black. And I'm like, yeah.
I did the same thing.
You know?
My husband's white, and you wouldn't know to talk to me that my husband was white. You wouldn't know to talk to him that his wife was Black. But because I don't water down my Blackness. He doesn't water down his whiteness. You know, I'm me in the North just as much as I'm me in the South. And he's himself all day, every day, sun up, sun down. But I think that's the misconception too, is when people find out that his wife is Black, that he's gonna be like, thugged out from the hood. It's like, okay, I don't necessarily need him to be like me for me to love him.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't need me to be like him for him to love me. So
And I don't feel the need to act any differently than who I am when I'm around her family, when we go back to visit, and I'm the minority in the area. I just enjoy her family and being with them and celebrating their culture and who they are. And they've been nothing but warming and welcoming and loving towards me. And so the misconceptions people have are completely wrong.
not to Bogart, but may I ask a question?
Sure.
What was it like for you as a white person to be a minority for the first time?
It was different. It was weird. Like when I first got there, Oklahoma is still segregated as far as visually.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a white side of town, there's a black side of town. There are whites that live on the black side of town, there are blacks that live on the white side of town, but visually, for the most part, they're separated. So on her family side of town, you don't see very many white people unless they're working at a restaurant or a store. And me walking around with her, and I had my first experience there. I had these guys looked at me really funny. These black guys were looking at me, and I could see the wheels turning, and they were just thinking like, oh, another one stole one of our women, and that was my feeling. I don't know what they were thinking, right. but I'm just trying to gather like, why are they looking at me funny? When we went to a mall, and all the malls are on the white side of town. We go there and we're walking around as a couple, and people are looking at us left and right, up and down, and that they're just thinking, what's with this couple? We even had it in Spokane. We walked by this bar restaurant. They had a bar restaurant that had glass windows all along, and people could sit in the windows, and they just did this rubberneck where they just followed you as you kept going along, wouldn't stop staring at you. Wow. So you just noticed that
we get looks.
Yeah.
We don't normally get remarks because he's 6'2" and I'm 300 pounds, so they know better.
Trust you.
But you can tell the wheels are turning. They're thinking stuff, but they're too afraid to say anything. They'll just stare at you.
Yeah.
I did have in Idaho one time. There's a lot of racist people in Idaho, and we went to a restaurant over there. And as we're leaving, this man is looking Lindsey up and down with a disgusted look in his eyes. And I almost stopped to say, do we have a problem? And she grabbed my arm and just like, let's keep going. We're going to leave this alone.
Well, see, that's something too that he just doesn't understand is I dealt with disgusted looks my entire life. So I don't deal with it the way he would, he's thinking, look at my woman, like, he's ready to protect his wife. But I know this could end our lives. So we live to fight another day is kind of what I think, and I said, if he looks at me in disgust, you look at me with love. So I don't really care. So, because the fact of the matter is I love him too. I love his behind too. Because at the end of the day, he's still my brother. Whether he's disgusted about me or not. And if you don't like looking at me, you got 3 other directions. Feel free.
Speaking of, I'm going to interject here with, we talked about disgusting looks, but we know that you have been crowned and you have a platform that you have the opportunity to use when you can, but Mrs. Oregon plus America.
Yeah.
That was recent.
Well, here, I'll grab it. Oh, it's 2 years?
2 years ago?
But they haven't crowned a new...
Yeah, they haven't crowned a new one yet.
Oh, you're the reigning whatever?
Yeah,
ooh.
The reigning queen.
That's pretty.
For the time. I know, isn't she nice? Thank you. I had like the tree of life and everything. I was like, oh, this is made for me. All right.
It was. It was. So Lindsey, it's been a couple years, and I know going into quarantine, you probably haven't had the opportunities that maybe you would have to have a platform to use your voice, and your voice is amazing. So how has this like what is it done inside, and how would you use this to maybe take a step or two towards an awareness that maybe somebody didn't have?
You know, I have been very blessed to have this face arranged really well. And for some reason in this country, when you're attractive, people listen to you. Uh, I have found that doing pageantry has given me an opportunity to speak to people that I wouldn't normally get to speak to, being the ragamuffin that I am. But it's also allowed me to kind of look at myself and my biases and the things I think about pageant queens, because as we know, historically, pageants have been very racist, and it's been used to shape the country's idea of beauty. And normally that idea has not been melanin. So it was difficult. I had to wrestle with a lot of misconceptions and a lot of ideas I had. And actually, ironically enough, the reason I started pageants was because I was the makeup artist for Mrs. Oregon when I moved here. So I was her personal makeup artist, and she's Black. So Mrs. Oregon International, and I went to all these pageants with her, and I started to realize, okay, there's a reason why you're here. It's not because it isn't racist. It's because you're here to make sure it won't be. I see. And so it's like I said earlier about being in those spaces, and that's one of the reasons. Thank you all so much for inviting us to do this, because I'm rarely invited to the table. So when I have an opportunity to sit at the table and discuss things that most of the people at the table don't want to discuss, and most of the people at the table aren't aware of and feel uncomfortable with, it's a privilege and an honor. And that's part of what the pageant was for me. It's just a privilege and an honor to be in a space where normally people that look like me aren't.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
We do love your voice, and we hope you get a chance to use that platform and do more work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, thinking back to the interracial relationship, you have two beautiful daughters, and you alluded to me earlier that it would be a good talking point, or interesting to bring up what are the challenges that come up with raising biracial children. And I don't know the details very much about, is it harder for one or the other of you, or harder for the girls, or tell me about that.
For the girls, probably. We've had some funny, interesting things happen. We've had some scary things happen. It's different because we're parents together for the first time. I've never been a parent. He's never been a parent. We're doing this for the first time together. And we just so happen to be doing it for children that aren't like us. Because when you're trained by your parents, they train you how to raise you. So
More like you.
When that kid is nothing like you, how do you raise them? And not to, I don't know why, but I feel like it always goes back to hair.
Yep.
But their hair, I cannot do my children's hair the way I do my hair. And he cannot do our children's hair the way he does his hair. So it's a totally new experience for us trying to figure out, like, I'm like, yeah, put enough oil on there. He's like, that's gonna weigh their hair down. I'm like, you wash it too often. He's like, it's getting greasy. And I'm like, that's the point. We had a very interesting intersection in our children. We realized once we had kids, there was more differences that we just didn't have to deal with.
Yeah, I don't know how many products we went through just trying to find the right hair products for the kids. And both of them, their hair is a little different.
Their hair is different from each other.
Yeah. One is thicker and not as curly. The other one is thinner.
Tiny little spirals.
Tiny spirals and thinner hair. She unfortunately got her dad's hair. Um, but you have to do each one of them just a little differently. And it's been a challenge to find the right stuff that works. And you ask questions, you talk to other friends, that in the community that have their opinions on what products work, and you just try to find the right thing. And so I got a whole bag of products that I have to go through it, and I just gave him a bath tonight and had to go through everything to get them all set up.
It's also just interesting, like, I know when we're out and about, it's one thing when I'm there, but it's a whole nother thing to see this white man with these two brown babies. And when they go to the park or they go swimming or something, you see their little brown flesh and their little swimsuits, and you see this pale man holding them next to him. It's interesting because, okay, this is gonna sound ridiculous. Now I know it sounds ridiculous, but I forget all the time that we're an interracial couple.
We do.
All the time. If it wasn't for the fact that he was holding my little brown babies, I'd go, oh yeah, that's right.
Or occasionally when you glance down and look at your skin together, you're like, oh,
that's
yeah.
right.
But
we're different.
We on an average day, we don't think about that stuff.
Because him and I'm me, so we don't really think about it. But the kids, it's interesting because I feel like I had to up his education for the safety of my children. I had to really rev up, okay, this is what this means, and don't let anybody do this. And if somebody says that, then you get away from them right away. And if they mean this, then that's probably just them. Or, I had to like give him a handbook because he now was responsible for the safety of two Black kids. And I say Black kids because when they go out in the world, they're Black. In our home, they're biracial because their dad's blood matters just as much as my blood. When they go out in the world, they don't get white privilege. They can't say, but our dad is Black, so don't treat us bad, or our dad is Black. Our dad is white, so treat us, like you would any other white kid. They can't do that. Their skin is brown, they can't be brown.
Can you guys speak to that? Because that might be a new concept for some people who haven't heard or considered that Black or brown children or adults identify with their Blackness. Even if they are, biracial, they identify maybe most, I don't want to put words, I don't know, look at me. I'm just, based on what I've heard and what I've read, it sounds like they identify most in the world. And maybe it's because others identify them as Black. Can you guys share about that?
I believe it was Paul Mooney that said, a prominent, one of our best comedians, Paul Mooney said, "I'm whatever white people call me." Mm-hmm. And that's just the truth. I remember I didn't understand, because I have a lot of biracial friends, and being Black and growing up with mostly Black people, we didn't necessarily look at biracial people as Black. And I realized how wrong that was, obviously. But there's this whole thing with colorism and things like that in the community that we could get into, but for another day. But we had a hard time accepting biracial people into our fold sometimes. So really, biracial people sometimes feel like they just don't have anywhere to go. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole nother thing as parents, for us to create a space for our children, because we don't ever want them to feel like orphans, like they don't belong with us, or they don't belong with dad, they don't belong with mom, they don't know where they belong. But our friends told me, because I had a hard time understanding, like, why would you say you're Black? That's like negating your white heritage. Why would you just totally negate the person who bore you, who raised you? And they said, honestly, when it comes down to it, I don't get anything that comes with being white, and I get everything that comes with being Black, except the good parts about being Black. So at the end of the day, they get pulled over by as many cops as I do. At the end of the day, they probably get they get passed over for jobs just as much as I do. So the things that benefit me as a Black person, they may or may not get.
Like what? What do you mean by that?
So I was blessed to be raised in the hood. And I have he's gonna watch this. I have a friend who was not raised in the hood. And he's not privy to a lot of his culture. He was raised by his white mother. And even though she was very down, he just wasn't privy to a lot of his history, to a lot of his culture, to a lot. And the man can't dance to save his life. Good God.
Can Tyler dance?
He can.
Dance?
I did not say well.
I guess that's a question for you, Tyler.
He can dance.
Not to segue from the story, but I just wanted to interject that.
No, he can sing, so I dance while he sings. But he didn't have the benefits of having the magic that is our culture embedded in him. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of friends here that don't have that swag, who don't have that magic embedded in them because they didn't grow up where I grew up, or had access to the Black side of their family. So a lot of times that it's a benefit to me. I feel the way I was raised was a benefit to me, but they weren't blessed with that. And they weren't blessed with, even though they were raised by their white parent in a lot of cases, they weren't blessed with the benefits of being white. So they just don't have any benefits. They just have all the downfalls and no benefits. So it's hard to raise our daughters in a home where all of it's wonderful, all of it's good. We go to the Scottish Games and we celebrate Kwanzaa. We want them to feel like all of it matters. Everything you are is beautiful and wonderful. And if anybody tells you you fit in this box or that box, you make your own box and I'll get you the materials. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I get passionate.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When it comes to, we touched on this a little bit, but you guys began so beautifully by saying the thing that brought you together was your faith. And, hopefully these conversations remind people that we're asking, how do we take steps so that we're moving all in the direction of the kingdom, in the direction of Christ, and we're together in this, and people are at different places in the journey, right? So as far as church goes, as far as faith goes, what would you encourage us to do? What are next steps? What's one or two next steps that we can do just to get another foot in front of the other to level the playing field a little?
Go ahead.
Both of you.
I would say, yeah, for white people, is to open your hearts and your minds, to listen to people of minorities, in Black communities, Hispanic communities, just to hear what they're saying of their experiences, because perception is reality. What they're going through is their experience. And to deny that, to ignore that and say these aren't problems is a problem. And if you only listen to certain people in media that fit your ideal, then you won't change. You won't see it.
You won't grow.
You won't grow. You need to be able to talk to people in the communities and to listen to them and understand that this is their experience. This is what has happened to them. And unless you can listen to that, accept that, then we can't change. We can't grow. We can't make a better change in this country to eradicate systemic racism. Mm-hmm. It'll always be there. But if we can come with an open mind, with an open heart, and we can listen and understand, then we will see for ourselves that things are not the way we thought they were, and we can make it better.
It really comes down to acknowledging and accepting the atrocities that have happened in our faith. Mm-hmm. We have to acknowledge it. We have to accept it. In order for us to stop gaslighting minorities, we have to accept that Jesus was not white.
Mm-hmm.
We have to accept that. We have to take these pictures down. We have to. It's blasphemous. And we have to stop using our religion in politics. We have to. They're separate. They're not the same. This man voted Republican all his life. And it doesn't mean that he's my enemy.
I didn't vote Republican
the
the last 2 elections.
But yeah, he's like, let me clarify.
but I did vote that way because that's what my church raised me up to vote. That's the way my parents voted. That's the way I did what they said. And I was just following orders.
But that doesn't make him my enemy.
No.
Just because you are for the left or for the right or anything, it doesn't make us enemies. I battle not against flesh and blood. That's in the Bible. You can Google it.
Yeah. We talked a little about that, about, the heart of God being on both sides of the aisle, different pieces of God's heart on both sides, unique values, all very, very wonderful and important values. And yet we pick each other apart more than we applaud or celebrate, to use the word that you guys were using. And yet our focus is Christ. So no, I don't hear you demonizing. I hear you saying it's not right or left. And I appreciate that so much, that you guys are like, vote the issues, right? Vote the kingdom. What is
What's God's heart? And at the end of the day,
good.
I understand that you will have a perception of God's heart based upon God's hand in your life.
That's good.
So that makes sense. But there's that song that says, break my heart for what breaks yours.
Mm-hmm.
If God is a universal God, then you got to be a universal server.
Mm-hmm.
If you gonna serve, you better stop. If you want to be a disciple, if you want to serve the Lord, well, you got to serve a universal God. So you got to search his universe for how to serve him. And that's just true. And if everything you've done for God looks like everything that was done for you, then what did you do? Because the person that did it for you could have done it for everybody else you did it for.
If you want to be great in God's kingdom, you must be the servant of all. Plain and simple.
I feel like that is a Sunday message that should be brought up. Maybe you guys will be used to bring that. I don't know, Melissa.
Get on it.
Ask the pastors. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know politics are hard to talk about in the church, but I think it's important right now as we seek to come back together and really listen to God's heart in the matter.
Absolutely. I always tell people, you can be left, you can be right. You can be right wing, you can be left wing. But I've never seen a bird fly with one wing.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
We just want equality for everybody.
That would be a really, really talented bird if it could. I'm sorry, but if I saw that bird,
that's a yard bird. That bird ain't going nowhere. But I think that's where we are, is we keep trying to fly with one wing. We wonder why we're not soaring as a country. We wonder why we're declining, because we keep trying to fly with one wing and we keep trying to suppress the other wing. When it comes down to it, I don't care what you voted for, at the end of the day, God is God. I vote God.
Amen.
I vote God. And if anybody votes God with me, well, he'll be present. If we all pray and we all seek and we ask questions and we talk to each other like family, because we're all under the Father, the Mother, the Holy Spirit, then we'll be all right.
That's good. Wow. Anything else, Melissa, that you have?
I think I'm good on the stuff that we thought through ahead of time. Did you guys, Robinsons, have any final wishes that you would wish we all knew? Something you wish your previous self knew? Anything?
I want everybody to know that it is good versus evil, not white versus black.
Mm-hmm.
And every day in our home, we celebrate love because God is love. We celebrate it. I have no qualms about telling somebody who I am because that's who I am and that's who I'll be until they put me in the tomb. But I also can learn and grow. So if you teach me something, you show me something, I'm going to listen. And I'm going to talk to you with respect and kindness and love because that's what the Savior says to do.
I would say just ask people to be open to evolving, because as long as we are on this earth, we are forever to be evolving and to be learning and to grow. And I'm reminded of a quote, which I've said millions of times. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always be what you've always been. And she knows. If we aren't willing to listen to other people's views and opinions, and then we can't grow, we'll just be stagnant. And that's not what we're here for. That's not what we're on this earth for. We are forever to grow and to learn and to improve ourselves and help other people grow and improve themselves.
And we need each other.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. Well, I feel like that is a great stopping point. Thank you, Pastor Melissa, for hosting, and for Tyler and Lindsey for sharing your story and encouraging us to listen in and connect with others with different stories, so that that person across the room is no longer her, but her name, Jane, or whoever she is. So thanks, guys. Until our next sacred conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.